Hello and welcome to this webinar on savings. My name is Todd Christensen. I'm Director of Education at Debt Reduction Services, Inc., a nonprofit credit counseling agency. And the topic today, everyday savings for everyday people, we are talking about simplified saving strategies. This is a webinar, and if you are looking to receive credit for this, you will need a piece of paper or a pen or some way to note down 3 different passcodes. If you do not have these passcodes for the corresponding quiz, then you can't receive credit for taking the class. So let's just jump right on in here. The first passcode is TIME, T-I-M-E. Note that passcode number 1 is TIME, T-I-M-E. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So the whole idea of savings, I know it's the most boring thing for most people in the world to think about savings, actually second most right after budgeting, which is another topic that we address in this series. But savings, to save money, why save money for something in the future when we can spend it now? I know we all know that that's not the way we should be thinking, but that is human nature. Spend now, buy now, and spend now instead of save for later and spend later. So the idea of saving money is actually to help us prepare for one of two types of expenses: the unexpected expense in the future, or the expense that we should expect and know that it's coming, but it happens so infrequently, or maybe it's just once in a lifetime, that we forget about it and we're not prepared for it. So unexpected and expected. So for example, unexpected, of course, hospital emergency room visits, or tires, although the tire goes flat, or the car needs repairs. That should be an expected expense. We don't know when it's going to happen, but we do know that our tires are going to wear out. If you have 60,000 mile tread life tires and you've been driving that car for 70,000 miles, you probably know that any minute or any time that you're in that car, you're going to need to be careful that the tires are done by then. So refrigerators go out, TVs, washers, dryers, everything, consumer items break down, and we know that's going to happen. And so we're just not exactly sure when. And that's what we're talking about in this presentation. So the one idea I'd like to get across is that savings is not an amount. When you hear a lot of financial educators and financial advisors talk about saving money, they'll say things like, hey, you have to have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses put aside for savings, and so they give you an amount. This is what you got. Or even 10 to 15% of your take-home paycheck, which I actually agree with for the most part. But what I want you to understand is when I talk about savings, successful savings is not an amount. It is simply a commitment. Are you going to pay yourself first, or are you going to pay everybody else and see if there's anything left over? Because guaranteed, nothing is going to be left over if you don't pay yourself first. That's one of the most common refrains I hear about savings. Well, whatever I have left over at the end of the month, I'll put into savings. Wrong answer. It just doesn't happen. We know that, and yet we fool ourselves into thinking, well, maybe this month will be different. It's not going to be different. The weird thing is that if we pay ourselves first, right at the beginning of the month, if we pay ourselves first, or at the beginning as soon as we get a paycheck, we actually will adjust the rest of our month's spending to what we have left over. A lot of people think, no, I don't have enough money to pay my bills. The reality is, for most people, once we take some savings out and put it into a special account, then we adjust all the other discretionary expenses. We dine out less. We will do a better job of a better disciplined job of spending at the grocery store and so forth. So successful savings does happen at the beginning of the month. So that's kind of one of the key things that I think we need to remember here. Okay, so now that I said that savings is not an amount, there you go. I'm going to put an amount up there anyway. $500. If we all could get to $500 in our savings account, we would be able to address most financial troubles and financial unexpected and the periodic expenses that come our way. Many car expenses we'd be able to take care of with that $500 savings. A lot of emergency room visits or doctor visits we'd be able to take care of with $500. But there are some, the refrigerator or the freezer goes out. That could be a $600, $700, $800 expense, unless you want to look at getting a used one. And there are good used ones out there you can get for less than that. But that's just a place to start. Because if you tell somebody, oh, you have to save 3 months' worth of your monthly expenses, your survival expenses, your rent, your food, some clothing, transportation, communications, or cell phones, so forth, they're going to look at you like, what am I going to do with that much money? There's no way I can come up with that. I'm barely living paycheck to paycheck right now. But if we start talking about a smaller amount, $500, which can seem pretty large for a lot of households in this country, but it's still not out of reach for most full-time employed households. So that's a place to start, and so that's $45, $40 a month over the next 12 months, and we'll get pretty close there. So I mentioned those survival expenses. That's the ultimate goal. Step 2, part 2, 2.0, whatever you want to call it. Savings 2.0 is, okay, now that I'm at 500, what's next? How much do I really need? Well, how much do you have for rent? How much do you need a month for groceries? How much do you need for your emergency cell phone? What's the bare minimum you can get away with on cell phone for transportation and so forth? And utilities. So not dining out, not entertainment, not travel, those kind of discretionary expenses, but the survival ones. And then how many months do you need for those? Most people say 3 to 6 months. It really depends on your employment. If you were out of a job, if you were in between employment situations, how long would it typically take you to find your next job? One of the rules of thumb is that for every $10,000 a year you make, it'll take you about a month to find your next job. So if you're mid-career and you're making $40,000, $50,000 a year, it might take you 4 or 5 months to find your next job. So you're going to need 4 or 5 months, typically, of emergency savings. Some industries are going to be much less. Some industries are going to be much more. But it gives you an idea of a place to start. Okay, so when we talk about savings, I liken it to a theme park. My family and I love theme parks. We love roller coasters. We love going together as a family and having fun. Not in the summertime when it's hot and there's way too many people, but we do enjoy our fun amusement parks. And so here's how savings is related to an amusement park. Think about, if you've ever been to an amusement park and to a roller coaster, think about the longest you've ever waited in line. How long are people willing to wait in line for these roller coasters? You think about some of the big parks, the Disney's and the Six Flags. During the summertime, people are willing to wait an hour and a half, or longer for a ride that lasts how long? 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. That is a huge investment of time for a very small return. But we're willing to do that. We get a huge rush out of it and memories and so forth. Now, flip that around, though. Here's what I want you to think of, because that's kind of what the idea of savings is. We save up, we put time in, and then we get to use that in the future. We're willing to do that. But what happens if it was the other way around? Imagine this. You show up at the theme park. It's super busy. You're really worried about it, but somebody pulls you. You go to get in line, and one of the employees grabs you and says, "Hey, you know what? If you want, you can ride right now. I'll let you ride right now. You don't have to wait in line for the 60 minutes. In fact, jump on the roller coaster now, enjoy it, and then afterwards, you can go stand in that line over there, a different line, a little pit over there where everybody's standing, and you can just wait for there for 75 minutes. But you get to ride now. Ride now, wait later. Like buy now, pay later idea. The difference is when we immediately go into this idea of gratifying ourselves and what we want now, we got to have now, and we'll pay for it later. We get it, and then there's no more anticipation. It's more if you got to ride on that roller coaster, and then you had to go stand in a pit or in a corral for a while for 75 minutes. Guaranteed, you and the others there would not be excited to be there. It'd feel more of a punishment, and that's really what happens when we get into debt and take on credit card debt. We've already spent the money. There's no more pleasure from it. Whereas if we save up for it and are looking forward to spending that money, whether it's on a trip or on a new television or on something else, we get to think about the anticipation, and it builds and it grows, and we enjoy the idea of it coming. And there are actually studies that show that this is true, that as a human species, we find more pleasure in the anticipation than the actual, in many cases, than the actual event or buying the item. So keep that in mind. If you ever are tempted to spend now, pay later, remember, buy now, pay later is incorrect. It's buy now, pay and pay and pay and pay later. We always pay more when we buy with credit cards or other debts using and having to pay interest. So remember the roller coaster analogy. That we're willing to wait that long for a small ride, and if we do, we get off the ride, and we're so excited, and we get to talk about how much fun it was, and we go off, and we get to go on wait in another line. And when we're waiting in another line, then we can reminisce about what we were doing on the roller coaster and how exciting this next one is going to be, rather than sitting and paying for it in some corral where we're being punished. So make sure that we invest the time to get what we want. All right, so here's your second passcode. It is interest, I-N-T-E-R-E-S-T, interest. Okay, moving on. Let's stick with the theme park analogy and savings. How do you save? Where do you save your money? Keep in mind that not all rides at theme parks and amusement parks are for everybody. Not everybody loves roller coasters. Some people love the Ferris wheels. Others, like me, feel like the Ferris wheels are some form of torture and akin to waterboarding. So when we ask this question, I get asked this question, where should I be putting my money if I'm saving it? It depends on what you're saving for and your personality. Keep in mind also that the longer rides, most of us would rather go on long rides than those short 1 or 2 minute rides. You know, if we could be on a roller coaster that lasted 10, 20 minutes, that would be awesome, but that is not always the case. So typically we enjoy the longer rides. When we're talking about saving money, again, those long-term savings, it's harder to keep to save, but once you tie a goal to it, then those longer rides become more enjoyable. If you say, hey, I'm saving to replace this refrigerator with one that has water in the door, an ice cube maker that actually works, or a front-loading washing machine, or a new water heater that's actually big enough for the whole family to enjoy showers in the same month. You know, whatever it might be. It might be a trip or a vacation of some sort. Once we tie that goal to the savings plan to a goal, then that's where the excitement can start building. And we look forward to actually achieving that goal. So thought you'd enjoy a couple of these numbers of the month. 34%. So according to the Social Security Administration, 34% of Americans have no savings set aside for retirement, period. No savings at all. That means basically 1 in 3 Americans will depend solely on Social Security, which right now it averages about $1,200 a month. That's it. That's to cover not just rent or mortgage, but also food, clothing, cell phone, and transportation, and so forth. So security is not really the best retirement plan. It is there to keep a lot of people out of poverty, and it does that, but it's not going to get you very far above poverty. So make sure that we are saving both for the short term and investing for the long term. 27%, that is the percentage of Americans who have no personal savings. So 34%, no retirement investments. 27%, no personal savings. It's more than 1 in 4. You walk down the street, count 1, 2, 3. They might have something in savings, most of them $500 or less. 4, nothing. 1, 2, 3, nothing. 1, 2, 3, nothing. That is a huge chunk of the population that has nothing in savings. In fact, 54% of Americans, according to America Saves Week in 2013, will say that they have a savings plan with specific goals, which means that almost half of Americans have no savings goals. Only 43% say they have a spending plan that allows them to save enough money to achieve the goals in their savings plans. So, oddly enough, that 43% is essentially the same percentage of Americans, that have savings of some sort, significant savings. They're also budgeting or have a savings plan, a spending plan that they're working with. So when you're done with this presentation, a webinar, if you haven't already, go and check out our budgeting webinar, friend or foe or frenemy. Budgets or spending plans are critical when it comes to saving money. So how do you save money? What are the techniques? Do you keep your money in your wallet? Do you keep it in a checking account? If it's there, if you say, well, I'm just going to start building my savings in cash in my wallet, or I'll put it in a piggy bank, or someplace in a jar at home. That just as if you leave it in your checking account, it's going to get spent. Money in our account, cash in our hand, or close at hand will get spent. That's just, again, human nature. It takes an extraordinary amount of discipline not to spend money like that. So what we suggest is that you consider automating a transfer out of your checking, or even better, right out of your paycheck through a direct deposit into a special savings account or multiple savings accounts. And it should not be, if it's too easy to access your savings account, if you're like me and you see your savings account is building and you're tempted to spend it on something during the month that you're not planning to spend it on, so that you're susceptible to impulse spending, then put it somewhere where it's not so easy. Find a second bank or credit union, maybe that only has one branch in the area, and don't get an ATM card to go with it or a debit card to go with it. If it doesn't have a drive-through, even better. It doesn't have evening or weekend hours, even better, so that you can transfer money over there, have it deposit over there automatically, either from your, like I say, direct deposit, or transfer it from your checking account using the bill pay. And that way, if you are tempted to go out and take that money out, you're going to first have to take time out of work, drive over there, get out of the car. It's going to be inconvenient. And the more inconvenient savings is to get to, the more likely it is that we're not going to raid that savings account. So I mentioned it's not just, you don't have to have just one savings account. Let's say, basically, you want, for each of your goals, you want to have you might want to consider having a separate savings account, or whether that's an actual savings account at a bank or credit union, or whether it's a certificate of deposit, a money market account, or if it's for long-term, it might be 529 for college savings, Coverdell, or it might or it might be for long-term retirement, of course, a 401k or an individual retirement account. So there's a lot of different options, but set up your goals, decide how long you have to reach those goals, and how much you're going to need. So, for example, with emergencies, you might say, well, hey, for emergencies, I want to get to that $500. All right, so you're going to set up, let's say you want to take You want to take 10 months to get there, so you're going to automate a $100 transfer from your checking account to your emergency savings, whether it's at the same bank or at a different bank or credit union. And so it just happens every month, on the first of the month or the third of the month or the seventh, whenever it is. It just happens. And then once you get to that emergencies, you say, okay, what's next? Well, we like to give gifts at Christmas time or birthday gifts. We're a big gift-giving family. So let's transfer a certain amount of money every month over into a special gift fund that we can access right before birthdays or around the holidays. And so you set that up. That's a second savings account or checking account. Your bank or your credit union should not, most of them do not. If they do, I'd look for a different bank or credit union. But they should not charge you for additional savings accounts. You can set them up. You can even name them. Go online, you access it online, and you can name your account so you know what the money's going, what it's there for. You can do the same thing, appliance and furniture. Look around your home. How old are your appliances? How close is your furniture to needing to be replaced? Your beds, your couches, your kitchen table, and so forth. Figure out how much you're going to need to spend to replace it, and then start putting that amount, divide it by how many months, and then start putting that into an appliance and furniture account. And a lot of people say, well, there's no way I can do all this. What the reality is, we're going to have to do it anyway. When the fridge dies, and it will die, we're going to spend money to replace it. And instead of putting on a credit card and paying interest on it, or instead of buying it at a furniture or appliance store and paying 25% interest on it, or worse, going to a payday loan place or a title loan, even these really high interest, high risk loans, where we're going to end up paying $40, $50, 400%, 200, 300, 400% annualized interest. Let's be putting aside into a savings account in the meantime. So the reality is we have to have, it's a reality check. We're going to have to spend money on this, so let's be prepared for it rather than crossing our fingers and our toes and thinking, I am just skipping along the yellow brick road and nothing bad is ever going to happen in my home. Things happen. You want to go on vacation, travel at all, let's figure out how much that's going to cost. Put it aside. How about your household or yard? You need to replace things in the yard, fix things up in the home. Your next car. If you have a car payment now and you pay that off, guess what most people do? They start spending that money somewhere else. And then when their car dies, that money that was going to the previous car, they've tied up in obligations for bigger or fancier cell phones or a big cable TV package, or some vacation home, and then the car dies, and now they have to get a car loan, and they can't afford that car loan. And so instead, take the money that you were paying for your previous car and start putting it into another account, so that when that car you do need to replace it, you'll have a lot of money, maybe not all of it, but you'll have a large chunk of it to be able to go towards your next car. Certainly, you're going to need money for car repairs. And so these are just a few examples. There's a lot of different goals you can save for. But plan on it. Make a plan. Set up the goals. Transfer the money. Set it up so it automatically happens. I'm a big believer in automating as much as we can. So this is the hands-on portion where I'm going to encourage you to go back to where you found access this webinar. There will be a link to our handbook or some handouts. And there will be a place in there where you can, it's basically a commitment. You can read the agreement. It's a savings agreement. So you understand that saving something, even $1 or $5 a month, is the surest path to ultimate financial success, and that you accept that playing the lottery, waiting to save until you're earning more money, of course, unless you're currently unemployed, chasing promises of fortune for just a small investment, those get-rich-quick schemes, that all of these virtually guarantee that you're going to end up with less money and more debt than if you actually develop a habit of saving something. So go back to that handout, find the agreement, and begin transferring money automatically into your savings account. Here's your third passcode. It is Security, S-E-C-U-R-I-T-Y. Security, S-E-C-U-R-I-T-Y. Finally, again, in that handbook, in that handout, there's a spot where you can start working on deciding what you're going to save money for, how much you're going to need, figure out how much it's going to cost, and how many months you have until you're probably going to need to replace it. Everything has a life expectancy. If it's not in that handout, you can look it up online. But for example, refrigerators usually last about 12 to 15 years. Washers and dryers about the same. Computers, anything over 3 years, we're kind of living on borrowed time, but 5 years is pretty common. TVs, depends on the type of set, but it could be anywhere from 5 to 15 years or more. Cars, about 150,000 miles, and so it depends on how much you drive. So just figure out how much you're going to spend on that next time you buy one, how many months until you expect to have to replace it, and divide the dollar amount by the number of months, and that's how much you're going to have to put into a savings account each month. And so not only think about these things, but also, like I mentioned, the furnace, the water heater, the air conditioning unit, the computer, laptop, the phones, the tablets, the video equipment, everything wears out. And if we don't plan for it, then we end up not only having to pay for that in the future, but we're going to add interest and fees as well. All right, so always follow up on it. Make a follow-up plan. Set this up, and then give yourself a reminder to look at it every single month and watch your savings grow. When you see something growing, you're much more likely to be successful and find the motivation to keep going. Finally, again, I encourage you to look at some of our other webinars that we have available, from budgeting, establishing a financial vision, building credit, paying off debt, family, relationships and money, and so forth. Do check them out. They're all free and they're all available. Please share these with family members and friends. Make it something that you can incorporate maybe into the raising of your children. Instead, if you ever feel like you need to ground a child, for example, if you make it part of their ungrounding, that before they can get ungrounded, they need to come and watch one of these videos, webinars, and help them learn something while they're going through that. Anyway, thank you again for joining me today. Today's presentation, again, saving strategies. Look forward to having you join me in any other events, any other webinars we have that you can make it for. So thank you, and I wish you all the best.